Hey everyone! It's no surprise after seeing Hades do so incredibly well that we'd start to see games that fall closer in line to some of the best concepts and gameplay ideas we saw play out there. In today's review, we're taking a look at Dreamscaper, which might seem incredibly familiar in many ways, but it's vastly different in others. Starting at the most obvious, there is a stark stylistic difference in Dreamscaper. While the art direction for Hades was more in line with a vibrant comic book look, using toon shaders and more obvious UI elements, Dreamscaper is subdued, maybe having more of a three-dimensional appearance, but still a more painterly look and feel overall. Both games are genuinely similar in how three-dimensional the gameplay is, but the added realism of Dreamscaper, combined with the cutscenes and the rooms that make up the city, they offer a much more immersive impression of the world. The game also has a lot of artistic elements built into the storyline itself, ideas that you pick up from the dream world that carry over into becoming handmade gifts for the people that you meet. While it may not be entirely fair to compare the storylines of the two games themselves, the story of this game is both darker and more personal. You play as Cassidy, and the game sequences that make up the combat runs are an exploration through your dreams and memories. In this place, your enemies are your fears and your own personal demons. And the bosses that guard each stage, they're your most negative emotions that you try to conquer. While your character is not literally escaping from hell like Zagreus needed to, Cassidy is on a symbolic journey to potentially escape a much more personal hell. Lessons learned as you conquer your fears, or as they eventually conquer you, will allow you to bring resources back between runs, allowing you to unlock bonuses and additions to the game experience to make your run that much longer. When you die in a dream, it wakes you up into the real world abruptly, with your progress having made you stronger. Ideas and inspirations can be focused in the real world, allowing you to unlock things from a wide array of options. A major divergence in the gameplay is a huge variety of items overall. A number of new item and weapon concepts are in play at once. Not only do you have both ranged and melee weapon use at any given time, but you also have a shield and an equipable dash maneuver that they all vary in look and function. As the game begins, there's a lot of possible discoveries you'll come across in exploration, but between dreams, you also open up a variety of additional options to throw into the mix. So rather than upgrading from a single weapon choice, you instead will more typically replace your weapon along the way. And like an ARPG, each discovery will also have randomized levels and attributes. As you might expect, it's the combination of these randomized skills with others, whether that be through another equipped item or a perk pickup, that'll ultimately determine the strengths of your gameplay and your defenses. As you progress through the rooms, instead of a forking path of choices, the randomization here is done by the game itself. It does a relatively good job of balancing drops in accordance with your level at most times. Progression through the level is pretty similar to something like The Binding of Isaac, which was actually inspired by the original Zelda. Bombs and keys are discovered and utilized to open certain doors. The minimap actually shows information on adjacent squares, and actually lets you know if there's any leftover missed opportunities for you as well, which I actually thought was a great addition. Fast traveling between the map squares, which might sound like a bit overkill, it's actually extremely helpful as you bounce around sometimes in search of useful map rooms. At the beginning of the game, all the levels will be very samey, and mostly full of creature encounters. Making upgrades in the real world, however, reinforces your dream layers, adding rooms and challenge-like puzzles, fountains of recovery, shops, and enchantment options. Secret rooms actually also exist, allowing even further upgrade capability. Clearing each level of the dream, in my experience, is very possible. You don't often get shafted into a position where you are out of bombs and keys, but it can happen. At any point, once you locate the boss room, you're able to start the battle, and if you win, you're still able to move about the level if you want to. You won't move on to the next dream layer until you choose. The boss battles in Dreamscaper are more predictable than what you'd come to expect with either Hades or The Binding of Isaac. While enemies and encounters are more randomized in the other titles, the bosses that I encountered were always the same, in the same order, and they used the same tactics in each run. Progressing through the story and raising the difficulty didn't really seem to affect this aspect of the game. You're just more heavily rewarded. And while I won't spoil the boss sequences for each of the layers, the boss fights are designed in such a way that there's usually different strategies you can employ to get the job done. Despite the fact that the bosses don't change much, the random skills and traits you've amassed at the point you fight them can heavily impact that type of fight you want to bring. Subtle changes to the waking world and journal entries tell a bit of a story about your character's hopes and aspirations. As she meets new people, makes friends, and learns more about their interests, that rapport turns into a bonus that reinforces you in the dream world. Through your journal, you can unlock personal achievements as you progress, as well as set yourself up a default loadout for the dream run. In addition, you have a list of the people you've met. The strength of each relationship influences the bonus you'd receive for selecting them as your influence. I love that concept. The first few people I met made for interesting side sequences. That said, the storytelling here is a bit more symbolic than direct, and the conversations they have aren't incredibly interesting to me. There aren't a ton of obvious areas of opportunity for this title. It's a solid game. It does have a few quirks, like the cutscenes at the start of each boss battle you'll need to manually skip, and another once they're defeated. This is awesome the first time, but I don't really need to see it every single time when I'm going to be making so many runs. The storyline though, overall, being that it's more of an internal struggle that we're witnessing, it's not always as obvious a problem to solve. Overcoming personal demons is a grand goal, but it's a hard thing to play out compared to something more tangible like rescuing a princess. This puts the writers into a tougher position for sure, but I still feel like they were able to tell a unique and more symbolic story. When it comes to the cost, Dreamscaper is priced evenly with Hades. They obviously create different experiences, but I feel like Dreamscaper may have been better able to take off had they shaved a few dollars off the asking price. It may be something you want to pick up on a sale to save yourself a few bucks, but again, it's a solid game for those of you considering it. I had a lot of fun with it, and I still haven't even unlocked all the items. I have a lot of respect for this game, and I think it's a bit of a shame it doesn't have the momentum it probably should in the game market. It scratches some very familiar itches, but it does so with a smooth blend of successful ideas, while adding some dreamy originality of its own. Anyway, that's my look at Dreamscaper. I hope you enjoyed, and I appreciate your time here with me today. Thanks for watching.